Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor of Lincoln Square, and joining me today is Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. She was first elected in 2018, reelected in 2022 by the highest margin of anyone running that year in Michigan. And now she is a candidate for governor in 2026. All in Michigan, all of the statewide offices are up. And in addition to her busy schedule as Secretary of State, she's also found time to write a new book, The Purposeful Warrior, following up on your book years ago, kind of on how to be a Secretary of State, even before you were in office. So no stranger to that world as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. It's always wonderful to see a fellow Michigander, and I know, we've known each other for a while. I think the first time we talked was before your first Secretary of State campaign in 2009 when you were running in 2010. And I remember you were telling me about I think the latest marathon that you were preparing for. You probably don't have as much time to do that now that you're running for something else.
Yeah, you would think, but somehow this year I'm running 3 marathons. So
Oh
I've already
my.
run 2. And so I think it's maybe just like the intensity of running for governor creates more intensity in other parts of my life. So why not go for 3 for the first time ever? So yeah, I ran Orlando in January, London in April, which was amazing. The
Wow.
largest ever marathon crowd and group running a marathon in world history. And then I'm going to do New York in November. So yeah, and then I think I'll take a year off for next year.
Sounds
Hopefully,
good.
fingers crossed, I don't get tempted. But it's not unlike me to be visiting Marquette and hear that there's a marathon on Sunday and run it because
That's,
you know, Michigan's got a lot of great running trails and marathons. So,
we
so you never
do.
know. We'll find out next year if I do any.
Well, hopefully it's a good stress relief,
It is.
as you're on
It
the
is.
trail. Different
Yeah,
trail.
and it helps actually me center on like who I am because it's a very physical reminder
Mm.
oftentimes. Every time I start a marathon, no matter how many I've run, and I've run almost 40, I always get choked up. I always get emotional inevitably, and I'm pretty sure I can't finish. I'm just like, how am I going to do this? I start almost not panicking, but just kind of questioning
Hmm.
whether or not I can do this. And one foot in front of the other, I've completed every marathon I've run, and it's a great physical reminder that we can often do much more than we realize when we start out on any journey. And that's the type of stuff I learn and remind myself of as I run them. So it is therapeutic in a way to kind of center in my own sense of who I am and what I want to do in the world.
I feel the same way on the hiking trail. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
very similar.
absolutely. I did happen to notice that President Trump's administration this week has asked for Michigan's voter rolls. Obviously, Michigan is not the first state. He's been doing this in Minnesota, Nevada, Arizona, a lot of key swing states, just like Michigan. And so, can you talk to us about, what how you feel the state of elections are in Michigan and what the Department of Justice's interest is here?
Well, I'm all for transparency and always happy to welcome any inquiries into the security of our elections because I feel very confident, not just in our election security processes, but in the accuracy of our voter rolls. And in fact, federal courts have reaffirmed, despite lots of lawsuits that we're actually doing more than ever before to ensure and increase the accuracy of our voter rolls within all of the and also meet all the requirements under law. So this inquiry seems to be a furtherance of these types of games we've seen played to do a couple of things. One, increase the workload of election officials at a time when we need to be preparing to educate voters and do the work of administering elections. But number two, create a sense of intimidation, like we're
Mm,
watching you and we're going to question everything you do,
mm.
and in some sense, kind of gum up the process in that regard by trying to exert control over local elections and state election officials in without beyond the boundaries of what the law would seem to allow or require. require. And then finally, it is, it's not lost on me the states that have gotten these inquiries. I mean, we're really proud in Michigan. We've just had a federal court reaffirm again, that we're doing everything by the books and our voter rolls are accurate. But that said, when I talk with my colleagues in Arizona, Minnesota, Colorado, California, Nevada, there is a pattern here. And it is disappointing, though not surprising, to see the Department of Justice in this and so many other areas leveraging a political agenda and using the power of that
Mhm.
office and its authority to do so.
And this is not the first time that President Trump has questioned you or, Michigan's voting process. I remember back in 2020 before the presidential election, I believe you were the subject of a tweet or two from the president, which I'm sure is always delightful. And, also, after the 2020 election, I know that you were a huge target of threats. You had folks coming to your home, where you and your son were decorating the Christmas tree. And so you're no stranger to this, and I'm sure you've had discussions, with elections officials, across the country and across Michigan. What exactly is the state of things for the people who keep our elections running? Are these threats still going on? And are you seeing that people are not as interested in stepping up to help run
Mm.
our elections now because it's become so politicized and their personal safety is at stake?
Well, that's a concern. And we have seen a lot of people leave the profession, not so much in Michigan, but certainly in Arizona, Nevada, and other states since 2020. The interesting thing is, as those vacancies occur, however, you see many citizens stepping up to say, send me. I want
Mm.
to be there in the middle of it, defending our democracy, ensuring our elections go well, and are willing to take on the threats that may follow, which is a really inspiring thing. And it's frankly always what has ensured democracy has been able to survive as long as it has, willing citizens to demanding that it does. And so that's been my greatest lesson over these last several years, how strong our democracy is related to the citizens who are determined to defend it. And we've seen that in Michigan, not just through more people signing up to be election workers than ever before. And I'm talking tens of thousands of people signing up. We had 25,000 in 2020 alone, and more people running for local clerks than before. So it can be also very inspiring to see the strength that emerges from the citizenry when our democracy, when the votes and voices of our citizens are under threat. But certainly make no mistake, the threats, the rhetoric, the lies, the inability for some to admit that they lost an election, that directly links to violent threats and actions targeting us election officials. And we have a choice in those moments, whether we run in fear or whether we stay the course. And I'm really grateful that the vast majority of election officials in Michigan have not only stayed the course alongside me, but have done even more than before to improve the security, the accuracy, the accessibility of our elections and inform voters about it.
And I have to say, I'm I I'm very proud that my daughter Angela Demas kind of
I
heeded that
know
call.
she's one of them, right? She's one of these people who have stepped up to be an
Yes,
elected official in this time.
she's the Meridian Township clerk, and got elected shortly after graduating from college. But as her mother, when I see President Trump
Huh.
standing up there and saying, "I want to go throw election officials in jail if I feel that they've done something wrong," i.e., the elections don't turn out well for me or my party, obviously that makes me nervous. And you know I've watched elections become more and more partisan as I've been covering them throughout the years. But to me, this is at a totally different level of now, let's jail the people who are responsible for elections if we don't like how things are going in their state, if they're a swing state that's voted blue, if they're just a blue state. And you have made protecting democracy just at the core of your gubernatorial campaign. So, can you talk to us about the moment that we're in and just how important it is for us to, stand up for the rule of law and, for what makes this country great in the face of those autocratic threats?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's the truth, the law, history, of who we are as Americans that is on our side here. And I'm proud to go into battle every day with those things in my, in my quivers. It have the vast majority of American people who want to believe in a democracy where we as citizens can hold our elected officials accountable, where our leaders are making decisions not based on who's the highest bidder or highest campaign donor, but who the people, what's best for the people that they serve. And when we look at both the challenges and threats to our democracy today writ large, the rise of misinformation, the rise of threats against election administrators, the proposals of laws to make it more difficult for even married women and people serving abroad and our military service members to vote and participate in our elections. It's very clear that this coordinated effort, national and even with international bad actors to try to diminish our democracy has not wavered and is only the flames are still burning. And so governors in this moment can and must be guardrails against these threats to our democracy, against this rise in tyranny and fascism in our country. And especially at a moment when there's so many diverse voices in our state, being able to stand and protect marginalized communities and really all communities by talking about what really matters: economic growth, ensuring everyone can thrive, making sure housing is affordable, education is quality education is accessible to all, healthcare is accessible to all. That's what we need to be focusing on. And that's what, in my view, is an extension of defending and protecting democracy, making sure that all of the ways in which democracy works, delivering healthcare, seeing people's pain and doing something about it, showing up as government when you need it, but getting out of the way when you don't. All of those things are directly related to democracy working. And so in this moment, I think governors, as the CEOs of their respective states, have a tremendous opportunity to demonstrate to all citizens, government can make your life easier. Democracy can be something that we fight for. And that's exactly the antidote we need to what's happening, the cruelty, the corruption at the federal level.
And, we should also note that you are the former dean of the Wayne State University Law School. So, not only do you approach this as the top elections official in the state of Michigan, but, you have this extensive legal background into the right to vote and voting rights. You also worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center for years. And so you've seen all of these threats over the years to, people's, basic rights and the rise of these far right wing groups and hate groups out there that, have really now started to amass some serious political power.
Yeah.
So it's a really unique background that you have as you are now running for, the top position in a big consequential state like Michigan. Um, so tell us, what are you hearing from voters as you're out there? Because, Michigan is a big state, going from Detroit, where you live, all the way up to the Upper Peninsula, which I think probably most people think is part of Canada, or Wisconsin. What are people very focused on the economy, or what are the issues that you're hearing about?
I think people are struggling. They are struggling to pay for childcare. They are struggling to find quality childcare. They're struggling to buy a home in the community they want to live in, and then wondering if they have to choose between paying their electric bill and buying groceries. And there's this through line, even for folks who want to start businesses and have innovative ideas to find ways to grow that and to thrive. There's a through line of government not working well, of government, being incredibly inefficient. It taking 6 months to open a child care center instead of 2 to 4 weeks as it used to. Disinvestment in public education, also a decision past governors have made, has led us to a point where our schools are no longer in the top 10% of the country, but at the bottom of far too many metrics. And so people are feeling that. We all know Michigan can be the best place to call home. But in this moment, particularly on economic issues, as the cost of living increases, as chaotic economic policies and evolving tariffs impact our manufacturing industry and other industries in our state, from farmers to small businesses, and as wages across the board are stagnant more than anything else, people are feeling that pain. And as Secretary of State, I've been able to actually ensure our agency does something about that. We've saved people time in working with our agency. We've saved people money. We've made people's lives easier by eliminating wait times and making it easier to do your business with our office. So one of the ways we can alleviate a lot of the struggle, a lot of the pain that people are feeling right now is making government work better, making it more efficient, making it more service driven, as we've done in my department. And from the Health and Human Services to Eagle to Leo and all of the other acronyms and agencies, making sure those agencies are actually functioning well and working well and efficient for our citizens is one of the most effective ways a governor can quickly alleviate a lot of the struggles that people are dealing with.
I know that the economy and inflation were at the top of people's minds during the 2024 election, and probably did make the difference between President Trump winning re-election. And he made a whole lot of promises about, tackling inflation on day one and getting America back on course. But, as you talked about, he has tariff policies which hit states like Michigan particularly hard because of our auto industry. And, we work so closely with Canada that has, a lot of production plants as well. And a lot of times parts go across the border 8 different times before you actually, sell a car. And so we're vulnerable there. Um, and now there's this gigantic budget bill that Trump has signed into law that will really impact healthcare for hundreds of thousands of people, if not, into the millions in Michigan. Um, so with they're big moves that Trump has made in Washington. Um, what is it that you could do as governor, given those huge strains? And I'm sure it will have a huge strain on whatever budget situation that you would inherit if you're elected. How, with your hands being tied so much by a federal policy, what is it that you can really do to deliver for people in Michigan at this point?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, we do have to reexamine how we're generating revenue in the state. We're not going to be able to fill all of the holes that the gaps in the federal government are created, but we can put a Band-Aid on some of them until we get a healthier budget process and budget out of the federal government in the years ahead. A lot of the ways that we can do that are the same ways we've tried to ensure democracy is funded in this moment when the cost of running elections have escalated without any additional support from the federal government. And that's through public-private partnerships that have helped us alleviate some of the challenges and fill a lot of the funding gaps. So I'm exploring those in addition to just exploring our entire system of generating revenue writ large in our state. There are a lot of tax loopholes that I think need to be reexamined. For example, we all pay a tax on gas. Unless you
Mhm.
have a private plane in Michigan, in which you don't have to pay any tax on the gasoline that you use to fuel that private plane. That's the type of stuff that if we eliminate, we can generate additional revenue that can go to our schools, that can go to ensuring affordable housing and driving down the cost of living for our residents. And then finally, with relation to Canada and all the different ways in which federal policy and international policy is impacting Michigan, I want to speak with governors and build a coalition of governors across the Midwest and even leadership in Canada to see if we can develop regional partnerships and collaborative ways of developing economies of scale to drive down the costs for all of us, because we're all dealing with this in different ways. We're all dealing with the economic impact of these terrible policies coming out of the federal administration. So if we can develop economies of scale, revenue sharing options and the like, maybe there are opportunities that we can work together within the Midwest and even with our partners in Canada to still try to drive down some costs that are escalating as a result of the chaotic economic policies of this administration.
I know that your campaign has had a big week with announcing your latest fundraising numbers, and you've broken records. So clearly, your message is resonating with people. What other concerns are you hearing from people as you're traveling across the state? Are they talking about healthcare costs, about rising energy costs? Are you hearing concerns about the state of our courts and democracy?
There are two things that come up in nearly every town hall, community conversation, roundtable meeting that I've had. One is affordable housing. People cannot afford to not only build or buy homes, but heat those homes, energy costs, and then related to that, concerns about whether the air outside that home is going to be clean to breathe and the water inside that home is going to be safe to drink. So all of those things are, I think, really, when you combine that with the cost of living and the increase of cost of living in the state, creating a lot of pain and points and struggles for Michiganders who want to call Michigan home, but are trying to find ways to do that, and for employers who want to be able to attract and retain the best talent in the state for their workforce, and are unable to hire the nurses that they need because those nurses or those educators or those teachers can't buy a home in the community that they're asked to work in. So
Right.
housing affordability is number one issue. Number two is education, working to recognizing that whether it's reading scores or this question of whether our schools are accurate, are effectively preparing our kids for the jobs of tomorrow. It's no secret that we fall into the bottom of far too many metrics when we should be leading the country, as we've done years prior. So addressing, and as a former educator, as the daughter of two special educators, as someone who ran an educational institution and turned it around and made it one of the top law schools in the nation, I'm ready to tackle it. And as a mom, frankly, of a 9-year-old whose life and future is going to be determined by our success in reforming education in the state, that's something that we talk about a lot. And the final is the cost of healthcare, especially with the cuts to Medicaid and all of the other uncertainty and the rising costs of prescription drugs and the like, making sure that we're doing everything we can to help people stay healthy and have access to critical life-saving care in an affordable way is top of mind for so many of our residents in every corner of the state. And it's something that will be my priority to work on as the next governor.
Right. I know that you have kind of an interesting perspective because, like me, you're not a native Michigander. You've come here by choice, and a lot of folks are here and they never want to leave. Um, uh, Being as you've lived in different places, you've worked for institutions, whether it's Rise or the Southern Poverty Law Center, across the country. Given that experience, does that change the way that you approach things in terms of what you want for Michigan and our place in the country?
I think Michigan can be the best place to be a kid, to raise a kid, and to
Hmm.
call home. And we're not that yet. We're not that right now on a number of metrics. And, when I took office as Secretary of State, I had two goals: reduce the wait times in our offices and increase voter turnout. And we accomplished both. Now, my goal as governor will be to ensure that we are, instead of in the bottom 10, among the top 10 of schools in the country, that housing is affordable, and that above all, Michigan is the best place for all of us to choose to call home. And so investing in transformational ideas like high-speed light rail across the state is something we're also planning to do and looking into, so that we can ensure that Michigan is the place everyone chooses to call home or to stay home and to raise a family, to start and grow that business, to innovate and build off that great new idea. So all of those things, I think, are an opportunity that lies ahead of us, and I'm really excited because I know Michigan and chose Michigan as the best place to raise a family, and I want to ensure it is that for all of our loved ones, for all of our citizens, all across the state. One of the things I'll also just emphasize is one of the things I've seen across the state is no matter what letter we have after our name, whether a D, an R, or an I, we all, and citizens all, want Michigan to be a place where our loved ones are happy and healthy and safe and nearby. And so the job of my administration, my work as governor, will be centered on that, and centered on ensuring we all can have that, no matter our party affiliation, for the loved ones who choose alongside us to call this state home.
Madam Secretary, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you will come by Lincoln Square again, in the more than a year left of your campaign and afterwards. What's the best way for people to get information about your campaign?
People can go to jocelynbenson.com to sign up, to volunteer, to support our campaign, and to be a part of this effort to ensure Michigan is the best place to call home, and that we are leading the country on all the metrics that make Michigan affordable and make Michigan a safe, healthy, happy place to live.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.